Hi, my name is Claire Haxel, and I'm the NDP candidate here in Toronto Danforth. And I'm so honored to be here today. Thank you all for coming, and thank you so much, Jagmeet, for coming. This is so awesome. What a great day 2 to the campaign. But I'm also here because workers and families are struggling. And this is because wages have stayed stagnant, and it's harder and harder to get by. Finding good jobs with benefits is nearly impossible these days. And unfortunately, we've had 6 years of the Liberal Party who's done very little to help workers. And Justin Trudeau, he likes to talk a good talk and act like he cares, but he's done very little. And the only time change happens is when he's forced to do it, and even then, he's still saying no. But that's why the New Democrats and Jagmeet Singh are so different, so exciting, because we know that Jagmeet is going to fight for everyday people, go all the way for workers. And the truth is, if we want something different, it's time we start voting differently. So I'm so excited. I'm thrilled to be introducing our fearless, brave leader, soon to be dad, leader of the New Democrats, Jagmeet Singh.
Thank you so much, Claire. Thank you. That's so cool. Wow. As you can see, hold on a second here. I'm too excited. Thank you. As you can see, we're really honored to have Claire Haxel as our candidate here in Danforth, particularly because this is a riding that Jack Layton used to hold. And to have someone of this caliber really would be an amazing way to carry on that legacy. Claire, as folks might know, she's someone that works in healthcare, works in women's reproductive health, is incredible, and I'm really excited about her. Claire, thanks for that intro. And so, folks, we might give a quick set. No, it's okay. It's just some trolls. It's all good. Friends, I want to let you know what we're here today to talk about. We have seen really clearly in this pandemic that the Liberals have made a clear choice. They are clawing back the support that people need in the CRB. They are clawing back support from the GIS, and instead of focusing on the hundreds of companies that took public money and abused that system, they spent money on paying out money to shareholders by paying out dividends. They increased their executive pays. Instead of that, he's going after workers. And so we're saying really clearly a new Democrat government would make sure that the ultra-rich are paying their fair share, and we would make sure the companies that abuse the system, that abuse the wage subsidy or other programs, are paying back their fair share. We're the only ones in this election that have the courage to say, instead of putting the burden on people, instead of putting the burden on workers, we are going to ask the ultra-rich to pay their fair share, starting with making sure companies that took public money and abused that are reimbursing that, are paying back that money that they took. Donc dans cette élection, on a un choix entre Justin Trudeau qui laisse les ultra riches d'abuser le système, qui laisse les ultra riches de prendre l'argent public et donner l'argent aux actionnaires au lieu d'investir dans leurs employeurs. Donc dans cette élection, vous avez un choix entre Justin Trudeau qui laisse les ultra riches faire ce qu'il fait, ou un gouvernement néo-démocrate qui dit clairement qu'on va faire rembourser l'argent que les ultra-riches ont utilisé et qu'ils ont abusé du système. On va forcer ces compagnies de rembourser cet argent et on va investir dans les gens. C'est un choix parce qu'à ce moment, Justin Trudeau coupe l'aide aux familles, il coupe l'aide aux gens. Et au lieu de demander que les entreprises qui ont abusé les systèmes remboursés et payent leur juste part, il attaque les travailleurs et travailleuses, il attaque les gens. On a un choix dans cette élection, et le choix, c'est un gouvernement néo-démocrate qui se bat pour vous. So we have a choice in this election, a new Democrat government that's going to make sure any company that abused the system, that took public money and then paid out dividends to their shareholders or increased executive pay, that we're going to stop that. We're going to make sure they reimburse that and reinvest it to people. That's our message today, and I want you to know that there is a real choice in this election. Thanks so much, and with that, I'm ready to take any questions you might have. Merci beaucoup, je suis prêt pour vos questions.
Bonjour, merci. We'll start with questions on the ground. The first question is from Annie Bergeron-Oliver from CTV News.
Hi, just over
Hey.
here. Hi. So my first question to you is about the situation in Afghanistan. The Taliban have now taken over, the embassies are closed, and the airport has essentially been closed as well. I'm wondering what your message is to Afghans who have ties to Canada who are looking to get evacuated, and what would you do differently right now?
This is really heartbreaking. I'm sure folks have seen some of the images, really heartbreaking images of Afghans that are worried about their lives, that are afraid for their lives. So this is a really dire situation, and we've got a responsibility to do everything we can to help those allies, the people that have risked their lives to support Canadians and Canadian forces. We have a responsibility to make sure that they're safe. And so this is something that I'm really deeply concerned about. And to the people in Afghanistan, or the folks that are here, Canadians that have got ties to Afghanistan, my heart breaks for the situation that you're going through right now. And seeing those horrible images, I'm deeply disturbed. And I want to know that we're going to keep on pushing to get any help possible to the people that need it.
On a different subject, the NDP doesn't currently have any seats in Toronto or the GTA, and I know that's where you're spending your time today. So I'm wondering what lessons you learned from 2019 and how you're going to change your messaging this time around, what you're going to do differently to try to convince voters to vote for you this time.
Well, first off, we've got some incredible candidates like Claire Haxel here, who is an incredible candidate, absolutely someone who can champion people, who can lift up people, and so I'm really excited about the quality of candidates, the people that we have representing as our New Democrat candidates. But on top of that, we've got a track record. We can show the people of Toronto and across Canada that when times were tough in this pandemic, when you were up against challenges, New Democrats were there for you. New Democrats made sure that people who were struggling because they lost their jobs had money to be able to put food on the table and pay their bills. We were the ones that doubled CERB, saving and helping millions of Canadians stay in their homes and get through this tough time. We also increased the wage subsidy. So people in Toronto, many of whom who were faced with maybe losing their jobs, were able to keep their jobs because New Democrats were there for them. We saw in this pandemic that the Liberals wanted to do the minimum. They started the wage subsidy at 10%. They didn't want to bring in CERB, and when they finally did, it was only $1,000. We fought to double CERB, we fought to increase the wage subsidy, helping millions of people. And so we want to put to Canadians and put to people of Toronto, when you need help in the recovery, New Democrats are going to be there for you. We're the ones saying very clearly, it shouldn't be that the burden falls on you or your families. We want to make the ultra-rich pay their fair share, stop the free ride that Liberals and Conservatives have given them, and make sure that they are contributing fairly so that we can invest in people. That's what you get in this election, and that's what we're going to put to people.
Next question. Next question, we have Olivia Stefanovich from CBC News.
Mr. Singh, I'm wondering, I'm looking for more details about the announcement today. Specifically, how would you investigate whether large companies did use the wage subsidy to fund CEO bonuses? Would you mandate the CRA to investigate this? And what would you do to companies who refuse to pay back?
So we have a number of tools at our disposal to get at this. At the bottom, at the heart of it, Canadians see that hundreds of large corporations took public money and then paid out dividends to their shareholders, and that's publicly available. And they look at that and say, well, we struggled, while workers were having a hard time, why is it that Justin Trudeau continues to let the richest companies get away with abusing the system? It's exactly that approach that has allowed billionaires to continue to earn so much while people struggle. It's that same approach that allowed the wealthiest billionaires in Canada in this pandemic to increase their wealth by $70 billion. People look at that and are frustrated and say that's unfair. And so we can do something about it. It takes courage. It takes having the conviction to want to do something about it. So first off, we know that there are hundreds of companies. Some examples include Senecare, which is a for-profit long-term care company that took public money and then paid out massive millions of dollars in dividends. That's wrong, and we're going to go after those companies and make sure they pay back their fair share. When it comes to companies that increase their executive pay, that's something that we can also obtain with publicly traded companies. That's something that's available to be found, so we can make sure that happens. What we want to do at the end of the day is make sure people see a government that's on their side, that's actually going to make sure that the ultra-rich pay their fair share, and we can do it.
You've you've set Labor Day as the deadline that you'd like to see mandatory vaccinations for all federally regulated industries and vaccine passports. I'm wondering how exactly an NDP government would speed this process up and how you would tackle vaccine hesitancy. For example, would you introduce a misinformation and disinformation campaign to tackle that?
Thank you so much for the question. So with the deadline with federally regulated workers and federal workers, we know this is possible. If we put our resources towards it, we would achieve this. This is something that is crucial, and really the big concern is our kids. We want to set that deadline because kids are at risk. A lot of experts are saying if we don't do everything possible to get all adults vaccinated, it's really kids that are going to be at risk when the school year resumes. So we think this is a priority. We believe this is a priority, and we're going to do everything we can to push to get everyone vaccinated. When it comes to vaccine hesitancy, you raise a really important point. There are a lot of people that want to get vaccinated and they just have some questions, or they're just concerned. And we can address those concerns with better transparency and education and letting people know the benefits. There are lots of folks that are also up against barriers because they can't get to a vaccination appointment. Maybe they don't have the internet, maybe they don't have transportation there. I know of people that couldn't get to an appointment until a friend, someone near and dear to me, who said, I can give you a ride, I can help you book your appointment, and they were happy to go and get vaccinated. So we need to make sure we're doing everything possible to get people vaccinated. It is something we can do, and it requires making it a priority. For New Democrats, this is the priority, making sure we take care of people, making sure people are safe.
Prochaine question avec Jean-Sébastien Cloutier de Radio-Canada.
Oui, Monsieur Singh, en français, j'aimerais que vous redisiez votre position là, sur le passeport vaccinal par rapport au fait que vous vouliez que les libéraux accélèrent. Peut-être un mot aussi sur chez les conservateurs, c'est pas clair non plus la position. Peut-être vous entendre, bref, là-dessus.
Oui, bien sûr. Donc, pour le passeport de la vaccination, ce qu'on a dit, c'est essentiel que le gouvernement fédéral, à ce moment, livre un document qu'on peut utiliser tout de suite pour pas seulement voyager dehors du Canada, mais ici au Canada. J'étais dans les provinces atlantiques il y a une semaine et on a dû montrer la preuve qu'on a été vacciné. Et c'était un peu compliqué, c'était un peu difficile de le montrer avec des formes différentes dans chaque province. Au lieu d'avoir une situation comme ça, si le gouvernement fédéral accélère un passeport de la vaccination, on peut utiliser ces documents pour voyager au Canada, entre les provinces. Donc c'est un outil qui peut rendre la vie plus simple, plus facile pour voyager et pour montrer la preuve qu'on est vacciné. Donc c'est un outil que je pense c'est important. Avec les autres partis, je pense souvent on voit que Justin Trudeau donne les belles paroles, mais c'est où les actions concrètes? Il a dit que c'est important d'être vacciné, mais c'est où son engagement de vraiment accélérer la vaccination, de mettre une date, une deadline, une date où on sait que tous les travailleurs au niveau fédéral soient vaccinés. Donc pour nous, on doit pas seulement donner les belles paroles, mais on a besoin des actions concrètes.
Merci. Et sur l'annonce d'aujourd'hui, combien vous pensez pouvoir aller chercher d'argent avec cette mesure? Et concrètement, comment vous allez faire?
Donc, premièrement, les valeurs, c'est monsieur, madame, tout le monde, les travailleurs, ils paient le juste part. Chaque journée, ils paient le juste part. Et ils pensent, pourquoi on a un système créé par les libéraux et conservateurs qui laisse les grandes entreprises, de ne pas payer leur juste part, qui laisse les grandes entreprises d'éviter leurs responsabilités. Donc, dans ce cas, on sait qu'il y a plusieurs entreprises, grandes entreprises, qui ont reçu l'argent public, qui ont envoyé l'argent aux actionnaires. C'est quelque chose qui est public. Dans notre avis, c'est les mauvaises choses à faire et les entreprises qui ont abusé le système doivent rembourser cet argent. On sait que c'est un grand montant d'argent qu'on peut avoir pour réinvestir dans les gens. Donc, c'est nos priorités, comme on a dit. On veut s'assurer que les autres riches payent leur juste part et on peut commencer avec cette mesure de s'assurer chaque entreprise qui a pris l'argent public, qui a abusé le système, doit le rembourser.
Next question, we'll do Michael Carr from Global News.
Hi, Mr. Singh, I just wanted to ask you, because you said that you want to do more for the people of Afghanistan. Canada should do more. So concretely, what more would you do? Is it about trying to bring home and resettle more than the 20,000 people that the Liberals have said that they would do? Like, give us a specific example of what more, if you were Prime Minister, you would do to help the people of Afghanistan right now.
First off, what's going on is it's heartbreaking to see, and I think every Canadian believes that every single ally, every single Afghani that supported Canadian forces, that put their lives at risk to support our troops, should be able to make it to Canada. Those allies and their families that are at risk right now, we need to do everything possible to ensure that anyone that put their life on the line for Canadians, these are interpreters, these are those are the local residents that supported our troops. These are people that put their lives at risk. Every single one of them should have a path to coming to Canada, them and their families, at a minimum. And we need to be allies in supporting the relocation and providing safe refuge for those who are fleeing what is right now a really dangerous and scary situation.
Just as a follow-up on the vaccine passports, I wanted to ask you, because you're giving a deadline of Labor Day. How is that even possible if Parliament is dissolved and there really are limited options for you to push a government that's in caretaker mode right now? So how do you think that's even possible to suggest a deadline of Labor Day for vaccine passports and for federal workers to be vaccinated?
Well, I look at this crisis and I look at what we're up against. We know that there is a serious global pandemic that has impacted the world, has impacted Canadians, and with the fourth wave that looks like it might be upon us, and kids going back to school, we can't afford not to act. We need to mobilize every resource possible to say, if we want to protect kids, one of the most important things that experts are saying is that we need to make sure all adults are vaccinated. And to do that, at the federal level, we can set some leadership. We can ensure that all federally regulated workers and federal workers directly are vaccinated by that date, by Labor Day. It's an important timeline so that we can make sure we're doing everything possible to keep kids safe. I think in a global pandemic, we need to come up with solutions. We can't look for excuses. We've got to find solutions. And in this case, there are high stakes. And in those high stakes, I'm going to call on everyone possible. I've continually said that Justin Trudeau should not have called this election in the first place, but let's do everything possible to make sure that people are vaccinated so that we can keep people safe. That's really important. And then with the vaccine passports, that's a document that the federal government should be able to provide immediately so that people can show easily that I am vaccinated. We know different provinces have different requirements, and it shouldn't be complicated for people to travel within Canada to try to come up with different ways to prove that they're vaccinated. Having a clear document that's provided by the federal government so that people can travel not just outside of Canada, but within Canada, seems to be the right thing to do and make life easier for people.
Next question, we've got Don Cheveley-Hales from Canadian Press.
Good morning. In today's announcement, you spoke about taking corporate funding and funneling it to families, specifically support systems and services. Curious, could you say specifically which supports and systems you'd like to support?
For sure. I really appreciate the question. So what we know in this pandemic, a lot of people have been worried about their health. Mental health has been a serious crisis before the pandemic, but it's only become worse. So what we're advocating for is we want to make sure healthcare covers people from head to toe. So people get the care they need when they need it. We would invest in healthcare to make sure people have mental health services. We would invest to make sure that there is medication coverage for all. And that's going to be a massive benefit for a lot of people. We want to expand our healthcare to include dental care. So these are some of the services that we would want to see invested in. We also want to make sure we have an approach where we've seen big box stores do really well in this pandemic, but small businesses, like the businesses on the street, were struggling. And the approach has been one where it has ignored the realities of small business and really benefited big box stores. Our approach is different. We want to make sure the ultra-rich pay their fair share, these large corporations pay their fair share, so we can invest in supports for small businesses, continuing things like the rental subsidy and the wage subsidy to provide small businesses specifically with the help that they need to continue.
And as a follow-up, can you estimate a dollar amount that you would like to put toward those services?
Well, what we want to do is a different approach from what we've seen from the Liberals and Conservatives, who talk about increasing help to people, but really there's two options that we've seen in the past the Liberals and Conservatives have done. Either after an economic crisis, they've either cut the help that people need, and we've seen Justin Trudeau already doing that. He's cutting the CRB by $800 a month, and he's also clawing back from some of the most vulnerable seniors, clawing back their GIS. Instead of that approach, there's another approach where the Liberals and Conservatives in the past have also put burden back onto workers, onto small businesses. We think that neither of those are the right way to go. Our approach is to invest in people. We need to look at a third way. And our approach is let's ask the ultra-rich to pay their fair share so we can invest that back in people. We've seen the Parliamentary Budget Office look at some of our measures, including the wealth tax, and say we could raise as much as $10 billion a year off of just one of the measures that we put forward. So there's lots of ways for us to make sure that burden doesn't fall on you or your families, doesn't fall on workers, doesn't fall on small businesses. We can ask the wealthiest corporations, the super rich, to start contributing fairly, to pay their fair share, and we can invest that back into people.
Next question, we have Courtney Heels from CP2 Forum.
Good morning, Mr. Singh.
Hey there.
When Parliament was dissolved, you had 24 seats. You lost 15 seats during your last campaign. So what do you think you learned from the last campaign that you will apply in this federal election?
I really appreciate the question. What's different this time around is that we've got a track record. We can show Canadians how having New Democrats in Parliament made their lives better. We can show people that when you vote for a New Democrat, you get someone on your side. And we can show clearly what that benefit, how that benefited people. When people were down and out, or people were struggling, or people just needed a little extra help, we were able to double the CERB. Millions of Canadians, 8 million Canadians needed the CERB to get through this difficult time. And we were the ones that doubled that amount of support. A lot of workers were at risk of losing their jobs. We increased the wage subsidy from 10%, is what the Liberals introduced it at, and increased it to 75%. By doing that, we saved millions of jobs. So we can show in a real concrete way how New Democrats make people's life better. How having a New Democrat MP like Claire Haxel here in Davenport, or in Danforth, also we can have a great candidate elected in Davenport, Alejandro Bravo. But here in Danforth, having someone like Claire Haxel will be someone who's going to fight for you and your family, make sure the ultra-rich pay their fair share, and in the recovery, make sure that we're actually working for people, not letting the ultra-rich get away with a free ride.
Thank you. We're hearing Conservative leader Aaron O'Toole is about to release his platform today. There's only 5 weeks in this election. When are you planning to release your party's platform?
We released our platform, our platform document and vision last week in Newfoundland and Labrador. We'll be having more announcements around our plans, but folks should know our plan is this really clearly. The burden shouldn't follow on you and your families. Justin Trudeau has let the ultra-rich on a free ride. We believe that the super wealthy should pay their fair share, and we invest that back into people.
We've got a question from Omni News. If you could repeat your announcement in Punjabi, please.
For sure. ਸਾਡਾ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਕੈਂਪੇਨ ਆਪਾਂ ਪਲੇਟਫਾਰਮ ਦਾ ਜੋ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਹੈਗਾ ਆਪੇ ਪਿਛਲੇ ਹਫਤਾ ਰਿਲੀਜ਼ ਕੀਤਾ ਸੀਗਾ, ਪਰ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਨੂੰ ਇਹ ਪਤਾ ਹੋਣਾ ਚਾਹੀਦਾ ਕਿ ਸਾਡਾ ਵਿਜ਼ਨ ਇਹ ਆ, ਆਪਾਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਆ ਕਿ ਬੋਝ ਜੋ ਇਹ ਪੈਂਡੈਮਿਕ ਦਾ ਬੋਝ ਹੈ, ਜੋ ਹੁਣ ਰਿਕਵਰੀ ਦਾ ਬੋਝ ਹੈ, ਇਹ ਆਮ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੇ ਉੱਤੇ ਨਾ ਹੋਵੇ। ਆਪਾਂ ਚਾਹੁੰਦੇ ਕਿ ਸਭ ਤੋਂ ਜ਼ਿਆਦਾ ਅਮੀਰ ਨੇ ਐਮਾਜ਼ਨ ਵਰਗੇ ਕੰਪਨੀਆਂ ਕਿ ਉਹ ਆਪਣਾ ਪੂਰੇ ਹਿੱਸੇ ਦੇਣ ਤੇ ਆਪਾਂ ਫਿਰ ਸਿਹਤ ਸੇਵਾਵਾਂ ਲੋਕਾਂ ਦੀ ਮਦਦ ਲਈ ਆਪਾਂ ਉੱਥੇ ਇਨਵੈਸਟਮੈਂਟ ਦੇ ਸਕਦੇ ਹਾਂ।
Okay, we will go to questions on Zoom. First question, we have Mary Brooke from Island News Trend.
That noise in the background. So on the clawback of the GIS, and so many seniors are having to put up with that now for several months until there's an election, House of Commons gets back together. How do you suggest seniors who've seen a significant drop in income overnight cope with that for the next few months?
I really appreciate the question. It's really actually heartbreaking. The seniors that are having to deal with this clawback are amongst the most vulnerable. People that are on GIS are seniors that have some of the lowest incomes. The fact that seniors are faced with these clawbacks in a difficult time like this is horrible. We wrote a letter to Justin Trudeau before the election was called saying this should be fixed. There is no way that seniors that are struggling with poverty, seniors that are just on the margins, should be faced with having their GIS clawed back, their income supports clawed back. That was the wrong thing to do. And it's particularly wrong because we've seen large corporations take public money and not pay their share, not pay it back. So it's particularly just heinous to see something like this happen. I know it's really difficult. My heart breaks because right now we're going to continue to push to get you that help, but right now seniors are going through this struggle. That's why we want to bring a new Democrat government in that would never let this happen in the first place. Thanks.
And so the ultra-rich paying their fair share, if there's people out there who are listening saying, hey, that's my hard-earned income, we worked hard for that. I've heard families say that in the upper income bracket. So can you pin a dollar figure to that? So if someone has a family income of $10 million, let's say, how much are they actually out of pocket?
I appreciate the opportunity to clarify. When we talk about the ultra wealthy, we're talking about the wealthiest billionaires in Canada that increased their wealth by $78 billion in this pandemic. We're talking about people that take wealth that they create here in Canada, they make off the backs of Canadians, profit that they make here in Canada, and they hide it in offshore tax havens. Those folks, just because they're billionaires, just because they're massively wealthy, shouldn't get to hide their wealth and shouldn't get to not pay their fair share when everyday workers pay their fair share. So what we're saying is something about fairness. It's about making sure people pay their fair share. And in terms of one of the ways it would work is our wealth tax on fortunes of over 10 million, it would be any amount over 10 million that would be taxed.
Une question, on a Boris Proulx du Devoir.
Bonjour, Monsieur Singh.
Bonjour.
Vous êtes chez vous à Toronto, vous êtes à la Brampton tout à l'heure. C'est là où vous étiez élu au provincial, je crois. Aux dernières élections, vous avez promis un hôpital pour la région. J'aimerais savoir si vous réitérez cette promesse-là et si vous avez des espoirs de remporter Brampton ou d'autres circonscriptions dans le Grand Toronto.
Monsieur, j'ai manqué votre question à cause d'un peu de bruit. Est-ce que vous pouvez répéter votre question encore?
Vraiment désolé. Je voulais savoir si vous allez répéter la promesse de construire un nouvel hôpital à Brampton et si Brampton fait partie des circonscriptions que vous voulez remporter dans le Grand Toronto, où vous allez concentrer vos efforts finalement.
Merci beaucoup pour la question. Oui, on veut continuer d'offrir l'aide pour les régions comme Brampton parce que les libéraux, on prend pour acquis l'appui des gens qui habitent à Brampton depuis longtemps. Et ce qu'on a vu, c'est le fait qu'on a une région avec une grande population, avec un peu de ressources pour répondre aux besoins des citoyens. Donc, on pense qu'au niveau fédéral, on peut aider avec les investissements dans les soins de santé, on peut aider avec les investissements pour créer plus d'infrastructures comme un hôpital. Et aussi, pour nous, on veut avoir des néo-démocrates à travers le pays parce que les néo-démocrates se battent pour vous. Quand vous êtes dans un temps difficile et quand on était dans un temps difficile, c'était les néo-démocrates qui étaient là pour vous et vos familles. Et comme on a fait ce travail pendant la pandémie, on va continuer de faire ce travail dans la relance. On va toujours prioriser les gens et s'assurer que les autres riches paient le juste part pour investir dans les gens.
Merci. Et j'aimerais savoir aussi, concernant vos adversaires politiques, les conservateurs ont dit qu'ils se sont rapprochés des syndicats, ont fait des promesses qu'on pourrait qualifier de syndicalistes. Il y a certains syndicalistes qui se sont présentés chez les libéraux également. Qu'est-ce que vous promettez finalement pour les travailleurs en général, là, qui sont très nombreux dans la région du Grand Toronto?
C'est une question importante. Au lieu des belles paroles de Justin Trudeau ou le vrai visage d'Erin O'Toole, qui est un conservateur qui était dans le cabinet, qui a coupé les appuis pour les gens, qui a coupé les protections pour les travailleurs et travailleuses. Nous sommes vraiment un parti fondé par les travailleurs et travailleuses. Donc, on veut s'assurer qu'on a un salaire minimum de $20 au niveau fédéral. On veut s'assurer qu'on a des protections pour les travailleurs et travailleuses. On veut augmenter nos soins de santé pour inclure la science médicaments et aussi les soins dentaires et les soins de santé mentale. Donc, on veut s'assurer que tous les travailleurs, ils ont accès aux services nécessaires, aux protections nécessaires pour vivre une bonne vie. Et c'est toujours nos priorités. On est là pour vous et vos familles, les travailleurs et les travailleuses.
Cela conclut notre conférence de presse. Merci. That concludes our press conference. Thank you.
Merci beaucoup. Thank you so much. Thanks for your patience. Thanks everybody. You're all amazing. Thanks everybody for being here. Appreciate it. It's all good. We'll get some trolls here and there. It's all good.